we typically look for at least 40 people to join our Monday demo. So we thought for this month's Geek Talk, we are going to wait for the magic number of 50. So we've hit 52. Whilst we have a few people joining, I do know we only have, I think, till 6 o'clock to hear from both Michael's presentation and also, of course, welcome some questions from the group of people joining today. Now, this month's Geek Talk is anything but geeky, actually. So for those of you who joined before, you will know normally we kind of come together to talk all things tech. But for this month's Geek Talk, we actually had World Mental Health Day earlier this month. And for us, it was really a chance to kind of pause and reflect and think, you know, is technology really the most important thing to be talking about as this month's theme? And we thought, no, it's actually a much better time instead to kind of pause and reflect on how we're all dealing with our own mental health challenges, particularly as we enter more than 18 months of being in the pandemic. So for today, we thought, who better to talk to this topic than our very own wellness coach, Michael Surija. So Michael, if you can maybe just wave, there he is. Fantastic. So Michael is really an expert in this field and has been working with Icehouse now for over 2 years. So we're very lucky we got him on board just before the pandemic, actually, because I think his services have been in higher demand than ever. And I'll give a few reasons, you know, why that is. So at Icehouse, for those who are unfamiliar with our mission statement, we are not a product company like traditional other tech companies who have, you know, an application or a product that they sell. Instead, what we focus on is people, our people more specifically. And our mission, therefore, is to really empower the greatest minds to create the greatest digital experience. Now, I wanted to highlight greatest minds, right? Because that is really what we're talking about today. We build fantastic apps, we build great products for our clients, but we are completely unable to do that if we don't come to work with a great mindset and a positive mindset. So what we wanted to talk about with you today was some of the things we've learned since starting this mental health journey back in 2019. So as a country manager, I'm faced with various questions and challenges, and sometimes things I've seen for the first time. And some of them require a snap decision, and others, I really don't have, all the answers. And as a country manager, you always remember the things that kind of stun you. And one of the first things, when I joined Icehouse back in 2019, we hosted like an all hands on town hall, an annual town hall. We took the whole company to Pacific Place, actually, to the movies. And we rented out a whole cinema to kind of talk about, some of the key announcements, the things we were doing together. And of course, this is prior to COVID, when you could have, 50 people in one cinema. And then at the end, we had a Q&A. And if you see in the bottom right of the screen, we've included a Slido link. So if you follow that link, and I think it's also added to the chat, everybody here has the opportunity to ask any questions that they want of either myself or Michael. But when we did this same Slido feature at the town hall, we got a number of different questions about strategy, about what we're planning for our people. But the one question that still stood out for me from that day was we were asked, and of course this is anonymously, so I still don't know who asked the question to this day, but we were asked specifically, and it went along the lines of, okay, Icehouse, you're doing all these things, all these activities, these chill Thursdays, these barbecues, but what are you doing for our mental health? And I was stumped. Sorry, Australia. Stumped is an Australian slang for apaya, maybe. And so I really didn't have an answer at the time, because truthfully speaking, we as a management team hadn't really done anything targeted or specific to support and focus on the mental health and wellness of our employees. Now, usually I think most companies would say, well, that is something that you want to discuss with your mentor, or you want to have one-on-ones, and maybe you can speak to HR. Now, these strategies are not, it's not that they're not perfect, but it's not the ideal environment to really talk about, issues which might be very personal, which might be very sensitive in nature. And the last person you want to be sharing this with is your manager or somebody you work with. So we actually at the time basically, learned from what other companies are doing. And we were very lucky enough to meet Michael and his company and understand, his services, and basically him being offered as a support mechanism that has absolutely nothing to do with ourselves. You can talk about work, you can talk about family, your love life, anything. Anything that you might not want to share with other people. And Michael was this great sounding board that sits completely independent of us in Ice House, and has really been quite a unique asset that we've had, and a lot of people have benefited from. So we're very lucky to have him today. And why we've chosen this moment, particularly in the pandemic, is because what we realized is that mental health in particular is facing some new challenges that we've never seen. Is completely unprecedented working from home. We at ISAS have always given our employees the chance to work from home, but we never thought it would take, a year and a half just sitting at home, sometimes in the same space as family members, as kids, as grandparents you have to support, and really trying to set boundaries can create, a lot of challenges, both between your work life and your personal life, as that barrier gets really blurred because you don't have the traditional different physical spaces. We know a lot of people also faced anxiety in terms of wondering, well, what does the pandemic mean to, whether or not I'm still going to have a job next month? There's a lot of businesses, we saw went under last year. Now, we're very lucky that we're in tech, that we didn't face those same challenges. But nonetheless, other people's spouses, other people's partners did sometimes come face to face with those challenges, which again puts more pressure on employees to perform at a level that is equivalent to what it was in the office, but you're suddenly in a very different environment and under very, very different circumstances. When we looked at it further and we kind of thought, well, what if, we took this question in the town hall about mental health and we did nothing about it? What would happen if we just said, what, as an employer, this is something that, we're not here to kind of coach people, we're here to get a job done. What if we didn't do anything about it? Well, actually, this is not something that we look at as just, a learning expense or something that we can just kind of sweep under the rug, because it has a real impact on the effectiveness of employees. And we've seen so much research come out, particularly in the last 18 months, about the return on investment that we can expect when we really take time to focus on people's performance at work and how much of that is driven by a positive mindset. So we've seen some of the things that can happen when we don't focus on our own mental health, changes in sleep and eating patterns, difficulty concentrating at work, substance abuse, and I think most importantly is actually a weakened immunity system. Now, having a weakened immunity system during a pandemic is not, is not a great place to be. So having a greater focus on mental health, particularly now, has never been more important, not only for ISAS, but for everyone that we've spoken to on this topic. So without further ado, I wanted to pass the virtual mic, so to speak, to Michael, who has gladly given up his time for the next hour to share with us not only his experience as a professional coach, but really some practical tips that we can take away today, and you can start applying both in your personal and your professional lives. So thank you again, Michael, for joining us, and I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Nathan. All right. Hello, everyone. I should, okay, allow me to just start the screen share. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, something is wrong here. Okay, that's it. And I think, thank you so much for the opening, Nathan. I think because of the lack of time, we've actually really, thank you so much for introducing it so well that I feel like, okay, this is we can just really dive into the presentation, right? So Let me, where's that? Okay. So uh, at, af- uh, at the end of this presentation, right, you will learn a framework to deal with mental pressure and negative feelings, right? And you will learn a way to tap into positive mental resources to move forward, right? So since the title of the talk is what is work-life balance, right? So I want to start with this. What is work-life balance, right? So is work-life balance about having less work? Well, if you love your work, work-life balance might be about having more work, right? So, and is work-life balance about having more time, right? Uh, uh, I know people who finish at 5 and is very unhappy about their work and their life, right? So I think work-life balance really is about meeting one's sense of fulfillment, right? And what is that, right? That fulfillment has different shape, right? Based on your experience, based on your roles, based on your personality, and based on your goals, right? So uh, I think when we are looking at work-life balance, really what we're trying to find is well-being, right? That's what I submit at the beginning of this presentation, right? And I picked this picture of rock balancing art, right, by the artist Kokei Mikuni, right? And to prove to you that there's no glue in it, right, I'm going to show the next picture. There you go. That is the picture of it crumpling down, right? So uh, as I mentioned before, right, uh, uh, how did the artist actually balance these rocks, right? He actually balanced it by really understanding the center of gravity, right, of each rocks, right? And the same goes with work-life balance, right? You achieve it by really understanding the priority in your life right now, right? So it has different shape, as I mentioned earlier. So in this presentation, we're gonna look at what happened when uh, previously previously you have a work-life balance and the pandemic happens, right? Okay, work-life balance meets the pandemic, right? So uh, international coaching federations held a global leaders forum in 2020, and I'm borrowing their point of view about what the pandemic really is, right? So the pandemic, to explain it, one way to look at it is that it is a crisis continuum, right? What is a crisis continuum? It means it follows and it forms a cycle, right? So we begin with a status quo. If you look back at a time, I can remember this is a time when I was a hugger, right? I meet everyone and I just hug them, and that's no longer happening. That was the old status quo, right? And what happened is that there's an acute crisis, right? So if you look at the picture of the snow globe there on the left, right? What happened with acute crisis is like when you shake the snow globe, right? And all the small particles just flies and form into a chaos, right? That is the acute crisis, right? And uh, after that, the world started to see this chaos, right, and immerse in it, right? So that'll be around, I remember the last time I went to office is the second week of March 2020, right? The third week of March, not I haven't been going to office at all, right? So that is the immersion. March, April, right? Around that, the world sees what the pandemic does to it, right? And is immersed in the pandemic, right? And after that, there is integration where people start to really cope, right? And find procedure to actually deal with it, integrate their life with the pandemic, right? And we arrive at a new normal, right? But new normal will turn into status quo again, right? And as you know, this is not our first pandemic experience, right? The world has gone through a few pandemics before. All right. So with the crisis continuum, what can happen is that it produces crisis energy, which is essentially is a negative energy, right? So they can, as earlier Nathan mentioned, right? They can impact you physically, right? So it can increase your stress hormone, the cortisol, right? And cause you sleep problem, right? And it can increase your, it can affect your emotion, right? In the form of anger, sadness, guilt, disappointment. It can affect your psychological, right? It can affect your spiritual, right? You feel numb or you feel doubtful about everything. Right? And it can affect certainly the economic side, right? The loss of income, feeling lack. Right? So I just want to take some time now for you to reflect, right? So which of the crisis energy, right, is actually affecting you or your work-life balance the most during this pandemic? All right. Thank you. Ah, emotional and psychological. Right. It's a psychological. Okay, I'm seeing the food. Ah, all right. Okay. Okay. Emotional. Okay. Emotional. Thank you. All right. So thank you so much for voting, right? So you can see that it really is something that has an effect and it is negative, right? But I want to give you a good news, right? So the good news is that crisis energy is actually a raw energy, right? So, uh, right, thank you. It's a raw energy. So because it's a raw energy, it means you can process it and you can harness it. And this is an innate capacity that we have as human being, right? So we're going to look at 3 simple steps to actually process crisis energy and how to harness that process energy. Another 3 simple steps, right? So let me start with the first one, right? Okay. So we're going to use the same framework that the pandemic actually did to us, right? But now we want to isolate this 2 particular area, which is the immersion and the integration, right? So when you want to process the crisis energy, what you want to do is you want to immerse in the aspect of your mind that helps you, right? So what are the aspects that helps you, right? I have a short term for it, it's CSR, right? So we're gonna look at the first C, right? So the first C is cognition, right? So this is what you've done in the voting, right? You recognize, right? And you acknowledge. That is the action. You recognize and you acknowledge, right? But the best way to actually acknowledge it is you can use this script, this simple script, right? You just say, I notice the crisis energy within me in the form of what, right? So as simple as that. So once you take this step, you've made a distance between the crisis energy and yourself, right? So the second step is really self-awareness, right? And self-awareness is about directing the mind towards things that you can really observe, right? So it's got to do with what you can sense, right? When you engage your senses, you really raise your self-awareness, right? And that is the reason why a lot of people recommend exercise, right? Because the body is engaged, right? Sweating, right? Moving, right? But at times when you're dealing with emotions, you want to raise your self-awareness because what the emotion tries to do is that it's going to try to hijack your mind, right? So if you have disappointment, disappointment will want to hijack your mind. If you have anger, anger will want to hijack your mind, right? And so this is a simple exercise that you can do to actually raise your self-awareness, right? So you can focus on 3 sounds around you, right? And then you can lessen your focus into 2 sounds, right? You gradually diminish the amount of sounds you're paying attention to, right? And eventually you just focus on a single sound with just a clear focus on just one sound, right? It could be the air conditioning, it could be the wind, it could be any sound, right? But once you've arrived at the single sound, right, you move quietly to the silence within you, right? So you move inside and you center yourself. So that way, right, you don't let that emotion actually hijack you because you are occupied. I'm occupied with my senses. You cannot hijack me, right? So uh, 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 interestingly, you can just do this with your finger too, right? You can just rub your fingers, right? And feel the sensation between your 2 fingers, right? So when you get angry, disappointed, right, you can immerse yourself in your senses, right? Instead of reacting and giving power to your negative emotions, you immerse yourself in your senses, right? So that is self-awareness, which is really key to it, right? So cognition, self-awareness. And the third one is you want to involve a reason, right? So CSR, reason, right? And the reason for that is that because reason will disarm the emotion, right? So the negative emotion is trying to hijack you because it demands attention, right? So like I want to be given attention, you know, I'm angry, you know, I'm disappointed, I'm sad, I'm anxious, right? I demand attention, right? So with reason, you dismantle its power, right? And the action here that you want to take is really writing, right? And how you do that is that when you see, I'm going to give the example in the next slide, right? So when you see a crisis energy that you have identified, right? You name 3 major emotions behind that crisis, right? And after that, you try to exhaust the why behind these 3 emotions, right? So this is the example, right? So I notice the crisis energy within me in the form of anxiety, right? I heighten my self-awareness and I create a distance between that energy and me, right? And now I use my reason, right, to actually dismantle it, right? So I feel anxious because first I feel concerned about my performance because it is going to be assessed by many people, right? What if I failed? What if I cannot do it, right? And the second one, I feel anxious because I'm nervous that I have so high an expectation on myself, right? That I couldn't hold this standard, right? And the third one, I feel guilty because I spend so much time on this and I'm letting down. I'm using the time that I have to spend with my family. Right? So once I've noticed that the reason behind that anxiety, right, it will calm itself. It doesn't have the same energy anymore, right? The crisis will just lower in intensity because you've dismantled it. You've given it the attention that it wants, right? So that is the first step. That is what you want to do. You want to immerse any crisis energy in your self-awareness, cognition, and reason, right? A lot of time, this is enough to get you through the day, right? So if you're feeling annoyed, angry, right, just do this, right? And it will be enough. You already disarmed the negative feeling, right? But sometimes the negativity is big, right? And you have to fight back. You have to harness it. You don't want it to just be there, right? You want to make use of it. So what you do is you want to integrate that now calm energy by rendering a positive meaning into that processed energy, right? Why positive meaning, right? Because it is essential element to progress and moving forward. Is it true? Yeah, I think so, right? Because if I want to move forward, I want to know that what's in front of me is good, right? Now, the thing with positivity is that it has to be genuine and it has to originate from within, right? That is why sometimes when people just tell you, be positive, come on, pick yourself up, right? It doesn't work, right? Why? Because it doesn't come from within, right? So it has to come from within. So how do you tap on this positive experience from within, right? So positive experience can be tapped because you look into your own past experience, right? So the action here that we really want to do is recall, right? So in integration, we have 3 R's, right? R, right? And the first one is recall, right? And this is really useful because you will start to engage the part of your brain, right, that actually contains this feeling, right? So you want to recall the time when you felt most mature or most loved or most loving, right? And when you feel most peaceful, right? So I can give you an example, right? Um, if I were to recall an experience that I feel is really mature, I need to describe it, right? So I want to describe it. It was one evening, I was helping my friend who got an accident and needs to get some stitches in his mouth and his knees, right? So there's a lot of stitches that needs to be done. Right? So what I did that evening is really, I don't get panic, right? I just take him, right, to the hospital. Oh, we're in a foreign country here, right? So I feel really mature there. I just take him to the hospital and I just ensure that he gets all the care he needs, right? And I take care of the administration, and at the end of it, he got all right, right? All the stitches is done, and he's okay, right? So I feel really mature in that experience. So the key here is you want to describe and you want to be precise about that experience when you recall them, right? And after that, what you want to do is that you want to take that mature self that you have, right? And through that lens, you want to respond, right, to your processed emotion. And that is the second R, right? So uh, this is the response, right? So earlier, this is what the anxiety is about, right? And this is the response, right? So my mature self can say to my concerned self, right, that Mike, you know what? This is a great opportunity, right? So even if you fail, you will learn so much. Just like when you learn so much when you actually help your friends go through that accident. And my loving side can say, right, Mike, I understand that you have a high standard for yourself, but you need to remember that this is to ensure your excellence, not to intimidate you. And my peaceful self can say to my anxious self, right? Hey, do you feel guilty? You know what? You need to communicate to your family about it, right? So you don't let your guilt remain without clarifying them, right? Perhaps if you share with your family, then they can understand what this means for you and support you instead, right? Now we got uh, two energy that is actually integrating, right? So the anxious energy earlier is now integrating with the positive side, right? Because it demands for attention, and now it has the answer as to what to do, right? So that is what you do when you respond to it, right? So after you respond, you can just review the crisis energy, right? Just look at it, right? What's the condition now, right? It has changed so much, right, from the earlier. So if you've seen it that it has changed, what you need to do now is to reframe that energy, right? And you want to reframe and you want to state a new mindset, right? So the example is, so now I have processed my anxiety. I'm going to use this opportunity to learn as much as I can. I'm going to make sure that I focus on my excellence, right, instead of my expectation, right? And this is a good chance to build a better communication habit with my family. And that is how you harness something that is actually trying to eat you, right, to your side, right? Now the anxiety has changed. It has become an encouragement for me to actually finish what I'm trying to do, right? So um, this is the framework, right? Uh, uh, you process it with cognition, with self-awareness and reason, right? And you integrate it with a recall, a response, and a reframe, right? So uh, that is about it. That is what I'm trying to share with you in this presentation, right? So I can just give you a recap, right? That crisis is really a part of life, right? And it is a continuous cycle. You cannot stop it, right? And it happens in many dimensions, right? So the pandemic crisis mirrors itself in organization and individual, right? And what you need to remember is that crisis can be integrated, right? And while you integrate it, you tap into a reserve of awareness that you might never that you might not have been using before, right? And you tap into your positive resources, right, which is your good experience, right? And these two things are just crucial to growth and betterment, right? So the second thing is that you have to engage crisis in a framework, right? So you cannot switch around the framework, right? You have to devote time and energy, right? Which is what I really love to do in my work, right? On my sessions, this is really I try to shepherd my session towards this, right? So in the end, there's no instant solution, right? And we are all a work in progress. So yeah, this is the last slide I have, right? So I hope that from this presentation, you really have gained a knowledge of processing the crisis energy that is generated, right? And you're one step closer to achieve a more meaningful experience in your life and your work, and you're empowered to really get the work-life balance that you are looking for. So that is from me. God bless you all. I think back to Nathan, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think a virtual round of applause for Michael. That was excellent, and it's generated quite a few questions, which I think maybe I'll start from the first one at the top of our list. So just remember, for those who have joined, we have a Slido link, which is just in the chat section. So if you click that link, follow it to the website, you can submit any question you like, obviously related to this topic, and you can choose to either do it anonymously or provide your name. That's completely up to you. So the first question, so the first question that we received was actually about the poll voting. So for those of you who voted, I think we received 100% actually voted. Oh no, sorry, 70%. 70% voted, 34 respondents. And the top pick was emotional when asked about the crisis negative energy.
Right.
Is this a common answer based on your experience? And what's your best advice for addressing this?
Okay. Absolutely. It is common, right? I think,
yeah,
as I've mentioned earlier, right, emotion really is is either your friend or your biggest enemy, right? As I said earlier, right? It tries to hijack you, right? But when you feel good, you can feel really high. It can be really good, right? So yeah, but I think the key here to realize that all emotion are passing. Like if you remember, have you ever felt happy all day, 24 hour? No, right? You never feel that, right? So eventually, whatever you feel past, right? It lowers in intensity. The key is actually to be able to just move towards yourself and be self-aware, right? And it will pass, right? But the strength or the muscle that you need is to stay, actually, not to react, right? But to hold yourself, right? So my response is, yeah, it is very common. And uh, uh, if that is really my main job as well, dealing with
Okay.
emotions. That's right, Nathan.
Emotions. Okay. I think many managers could agree with you. Our next question is actually, it's I think more of a personal one. So
Sure.
this is from somebody who said, I always think that I work happily. I don't have any problem with the pandemic,
Right.
but my body says different. In the morning, I sometimes feel nauseous on work days, especially when the workload is heavy. But this never happens on the weekend or holiday. What does this mean?
What does this mean? Okay. On a work day, I feel nauseous. Okay.
In the
Hmm.
morning? Yeah.
In the morning. Okay, okay. I'm gonna ask the questioner actually the next question, for how long,
Okay.
right? Because this decides, right? This is a diagnostic kind of questions, right? So in order to answer that, I need to understand better and more, right? But okay, if the questioner said nothing like that happened in the weekend, right? Okay, perhaps you really need to be to understand which part of the work really intimidate you or really felt heavy on you, right? And perhaps you need a work strategy, because okay, one of the thing I learned and that is really interesting is that I don't know, have you heard of Parkinson law, Nathan? Right. So
No.
Parkinson law, right? If you're into the productivity hack, right, is a law that states, right, the the more time you have to do a task, the more complexity you add to it, and that is because your brain, right, it loves to add complexity to things, right? So
Mhm.
my advice to this person who is like feeling nauseous, right? You might want to look at your task and in fact cut the deadline in half, right? Or you might want to see what works you're doing, right? And whether you are adding complexity to the work, right? That cause you to actually feel I cannot do it, right? But I don't know if I'm touching the right nerve here, right? But it's just on my sense, right? Because at times you can
Mhm.
feel that it's bigger than it is because you don't use the right angle to view it. And I know that I am subjected to this, right? So when I learned
Mhm.
about Parkinson law, it says that whenever you wait a work, right, cut the deadline, right. Don't say that the deadline is next week. Instead, say, okay, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do in 3 days. I'm gonna work with a strategy. I'm gonna use my time to achieve it, right, and see in 3 days how much work I actually do, right. And that is a healthier
Yeah.
way to approach that task than knowing that it's a 1 week and started to think, okay, how should I do this and that, right? So that to add complexity to what you need to do will make you feel nauseous, actually. But I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
touching the right nerve here.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe sometimes need more information, but it's a really good answer. I like the Parkins theory. That's excellent. We
Thank
have a
you.
few more questions on the Q&A, but I thought I would actually just open it to the floor. If
Ah,
anybody
sure.
was brave enough to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, whether you want to say your name or not. Um, we'll open up for one question for now from the floor, unless there's a few. We have 52 people online. Let's see if anyone wants to be the first.
Okay, maybe I want to ask question.
Sure.
Okay.
Great, Farhan.
Okay. I think I'm just curious about the mental health is also related about how strong your mentality is, right? Some people have very strong mentality, some people have weak mentality. So the kind of little pressure sometimes already breaks mentality of people, but people with strong mentality could endure higher pressure, right? So how do you get stronger mentality?
How do you get stronger mentality? Many ways, right? But sometimes, right, bad experience is necessary for that, right? That is why the crisis is a cycle, right? So how many crisis cycle have you been through in your life, right? So that would actually build your muscle, because this is where the maxim actually becomes real. What doesn't kill you, right, makes you stronger. Okay, I was expecting you to say it makes you stronger, right? But yeah, I'm serious, right? If you ask me, like, how do you build it, right? Two ways, right? You face the crisis, right? You face really the main difficulties of your life, right? And you become stronger. The second one is I'll be back to the self-awareness again, right? Because sometimes what makes you is what makes you weak, right, is something you did not notice, right? So you need to also have a bigger awareness of your weakness, right? You need to also have a bigger awareness of, like, oh, okay, I'm so easily angered, right? Or, oh, okay, I'm so easily worried, right? So those things might hold something, right? There may be a reason for that, and to take care of that will make you stronger, right? So you can either, if you're confident, then face the crisis, right? But if you realize that, okay, I actually want to take care of the small things that bugs me, right, and increase my self-awareness, that also works, right? Is that kind of like answer your question?
I think so. So you are saying that the more we take actions, the more we are in the crisis and then taking actions to strengthen it, it will help to get our mentality stronger.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. But handling it the right way, right? Not like holding it and it's like, I'm gonna break. No, right? It is, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhan.
I just unmute myself. Thanks very much for the question, Farhan. I might ask a question also, just
Sure.
myself. I think as a manager, I think I need to confess that sometimes we're not always really linked or in tune with how our employees, really feel or how they're doing outside of work. Do you have any advice for maybe managers, maybe building more empathy or giving a safer environment where employees feel more able to, maybe request time off or request a mental health day to take a break? Because I think, like Farhan said, sometimes it's perceived as weakness. Do you have any advice for managers in creating an environment where that perception or that myth, we get rid of it and people feel comfortable enough to be open and say, hey, things are pretty intense right now. I need some time off.
Right. So what is my advice for managers who is facing that their team is actually feeling like they will feel weak if they take time off, right?
Yeah,
that is the question, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to speak to the manager. Right. But okay, if the manager is aware that the team is really like not taking time off because they're afraid to be seen as weak, right, then this is to be addressed, right. I think it will be on the manager's part to just communicate about it, right? Because it's gonna be very hard to clarify this from the bottom, right? Because they will not have that's the strength to actually confess, right? So I think it's really the manager to actually have. This is if you're working and you're seeing signs, right, of the people really getting exhausted, right? I think the best thing to do is to have one-on-ones and to just say, how are you? Actually, that is right. But I understand how business runs, right? Because it may be tight, right? The managers cannot do this and that, right? So that perhaps that is why I have a session.
Okay, yeah, it's true.
Right.
Okay.
So
Thanks, Michael. We'll switch back to the Q&A questions. We're getting actually a few likes in different rankings. I think what's interesting is the first the two most popular questions are actually kind of the opposite. So it shows, I think you're back to your first point, which is you get people who maybe don't work many hours and are really unhappy, and people who work way too many hours and are really happy. So we've got a question which I think is similar. So the question is, how do I stay positive when you have nothing to do?
How do I stay positive when you have nothing to do? Thank you so much. Okay.
And maybe this is in, I think, maybe two parts, right? Because I think like even in our business, sometimes, between projects, sometimes people don't have a lot to do. Idle.
Right.
And I think maybe the other part as well is, usually people come to work on a Monday and we say, hey, how was your weekend? And everybody just looks at you and like, well, how do you think it was? We got nothing to do, right? There's no one to see, there's nothing open, right? So maybe it works both ways, right? So both professionally and on the weekends with maybe nothing to do. How do we stay positive? Did we lose Michael? I hope not.
I think we lost him, yeah.
Okay. Maybe he had something to do. All right, maybe I think, Mike got disconnected. Okay, that's fine. We can, or maybe I can, I guess, try and
You can try to answer it.
I can try and answer it. So I think two parts. How to stay positive when you have nothing to do. I think this is maybe a double-edged sword from my perspective. I think sometimes you can ask, how do you stay positive when you have too much to do? So I think it comes back to finding balance. But when you have nothing to do, I mean, the first thing, if we talk about it in the professional sense, is to really speak with your manager and communicate and make it clear that, you are maybe have more time than you would like. Maybe it's been a while since you had a one-on-one, that your manager is not aware of, that you don't have a high workload than normal. And really communicate that you have that extra time. Now, there is always going to be meaningful work. Sometimes I think what we find is, in organizations, you have half the company are overworked and the other half are underworked, right? So it's about finding balance and recognizing when your mentees don't have enough work, and really not just giving them, work for the sake of work, but meaningful work. And that is something that benefits both the employees learning as well as the objectives of the business. I guess the second part, how to stay positive if it's the weekend and maybe you don't have, the same social activities. I don't actually have really an answer for that. I think I faced the challenge. That's okay. No problem. I face this challenge like everybody else. The work week is over. And then you only realize how lonely you are, when you're not working, right? Which is a Saturday and Sunday and you're stuck at home with nothing to do because everything's shut. But I, took up a few hobbies. started a few, what do they call, house parties, virtual house parties. That app, which was really fun to play kind of trivia games, and do a lot of reading and online learning. So things that, is a bit more engaging for your mind rather than just turning on the latest Netflix series and binge watching yourself to death. I think that's the easy way out to fill the time. So now that Michael's back, maybe you have a better answer than me.
Oh, well,
how to stay positive when you have nothing to do.
That's right. Okay, right. So if you feel bad because you don't have anything to do, right, you might be tying your value to something that you might have to untie the hook of what is valuable, right? This is not to say that it's not good to have a good work ethic, right? It's of course it's great, and of course to get the work done is also great, right? But rest is also part of productivity, right? So when you see that you are idle, use that really to rest, not to worry that because I have nothing to do, I will not achieve or perform, right? Or maybe I will, I don't know what's in the mind when you are not positive, right? But when you're idle, use it to rest, right? And I think when I just joined back, you were talking about some activities like hobbies, right? So I think it's good time to actually find what can refresh you, right? And what can really grow you personally as well, right? I think you have to first unhook the idea that idle means unproductive, but you gotta connect with the idea that idle means rest, and rest is part of productivity because it is, right?
Yeah, great answer. Again, much better than mine. Thank you. Okay. So now on the other side of that question comes, the new normal. So how to quit from being a workaholic. I feel uneasy if I don't do anything. I could work for more than 12 hours in a day.
Right.
So this is the other side, I guess, of the coin. So people who are maybe more workaholic inclined. What advice do you have for them?
Okay. First is I think when you do that, it's a similar soul searching, right? But I think for this group, one thing you have to also observe is that how is your body keeping up with that? How is your body and your mind keeping up with that, right? Because you see, I want to give a bit of a reason as well for working long hours and really work, right, and enjoying it, right? If you are driven by your personal vision and you have a goal and you do that, I said yes, right? Because I'm all about empowering you, right? But when you started to say like, I'm such a workaholic, right? Right. That's a different tone, right? But when you work and you have a vision, right? I mean, we've heard stories everywhere, right? A successful founder, right? Sleeps peanuts, right? Sleeps like so little, right? But what did they gain in return? What vision are they trying to achieve there, right? So my question back to the questioner is that what are you trying to achieve, right? And if that is really a value to you, right, and you really are consciously putting those hours to actually achieve it, then don't let me stop you, right? But if you started to see, right, oh, my body's working, it started to not work as I wish it worked, right? Or yeah, when you started to notice these things, right, that is a time to actually refocus, right? And because there's always work to do when you start working.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Michael. We've got a few more likes. So they're actually automatically ranking. So one with 4 likes is actually more specifically about if we have problems with our manager, right? So before we said talk with our manager if we have any problem, but what if our manager is the reason we have a problem, if there's something wrong with the relationship with the mentor?
Okay. What if my manager is my problem, right? I am I'm thinking about how to answer this without okay, you know what, I'll just be very honest, right? Okay,
Very honest,
depending,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, depending on where you are in your career, right? I mean, this is unavoidable. I have problem with my managers, right? And I have to process that. I have to really find way, right? One of the way is to be courageous, right? And this is easy to say, but very hard to do, right? And that's why I think earlier from your question, right? What happens if the manager notice? And I mentioned to you, okay, it has to be the manager's work to do to actually raise the awareness, because from the bottom it's hard to raise that awareness, right? So yeah, um, um, okay, I'm gonna ask this question to the person, right? Uh, uh, how do you value your current work, right? What do you want to get out of it, right? If you have problem with your managers, you gotta reflect on, okay, where's this leading me? Where's this work leading me, right? What are my options to clarify with this person, right? And if my options is really low and I couldn't do it, right, what is my defending strategy, right? Where should I put my energy to, right? But yeah, I experienced that, and I think the more senior you are in your working experience, the more you have courage and positioning to actually handle that situation, right? So if you are in that position, right, uh, uh, it's normal. Right, and it is actually something that you pick up as you work, and you realize, okay, you develop a personality whereby I want to avoid that. So this is what I should say to him, right? So, and that is something you learn over the years. So yeah, that is my answer, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might also maybe add a bit to that as well.
Sure.
Because I myself is, I've had several managers over my past work experience, and of course I'm a manager myself. And I think where there's misalignment with your manager, between the manager or the mentor and the mentee, I think often what helps is trying to align on expectations. Sometimes, like you said, the sense of self is very different between the mentor and the mentee. And I think just openly sharing, how you think you're going, where you think you're stuck, and trying to see if your evaluation of yourself is actually aligned with your manager's expectations of you, right? So I think if both of you are clear on what the expectation is and your self-awareness of that situation, I think it really opens up a more meaningful dialogue as well.
Absolutely, and that was the option I'm talking about. But it takes courage,
Okay.
right? It takes courage
Yeah,
to do
for
that,
sure.
right? Yeah,
Sure.
and
Yes,
I
yes.
think the questioner here is in a position whereby, what if what if my manager is the problem? So that is that problem with the courage, right? So yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it takes courage, and yes, exactly. You got to do that. You got to align the expectations,
Okay.
and you got to see after that conversation what happened.
Yep.
Right.
And maybe my advice, because that was more for maybe for the mentees, but my advice with the mentors, I think in that situation, is always also be mindful of not just giving people work for the sake of work, but always trying to make it clear as to why. I think often when we start with why, the meaning behind the work and the purpose of the work and the objectives becomes a lot clearer and a lot more meaningful for those working on the project or the initiative. And you might even find new ways to actually address the same why, if everybody is clear as to what is the purpose behind this. So being open with that, not just focusing on the task, which is the what. Okay. Next question. Well, this is, I guess, it's a statement from the only person who has chosen not to be anonymous, which is Kara. Kara basically asked, whoever is this workaholic, please be my teammate on our next project. If that person wants to. Okay, well, let's close that one off as a question. Next question is, sometimes we need to give more challenges and responsibilities than what people already are comfortable with. Push them to grow, to be clear. I think that's great advice. If anybody who posted that question wants to Add to it.
Sorry,
Ah,
it's actually a question, so it's to be continued, and
ah,
there's a second.
oh, to be continued. Oh, okay. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, we also don't want to stress them. How can we find the perfect balance? Sorry, thanks for that, Bunny. So it's about finding balance in pushing people outside of their comfort zone so they can learn, but also, I guess, not pushing them beyond their capabilities so that they get stressed out.
Right.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I think that's tricky. And because I also understand sometimes your judgment on the person might not be exactly precise as well, right? So you're guessing which one will break them, right? So that is tricky. How do you find the balance? It's really give the task and communicate midway, because
Yeah.
yeah, because I think and also if you clarify that the intention is really to grow, right, and they catch it, right, and they know that facing the hardship they have your support, that's a different thing than when you actually don't state in the beginning this is for growth, right? Or sometimes to this question also, it is also important to see what's the person's aspiration originally, because I remember having tasks that actually contradicts my aspiration is more like a no, it's not a growth, it's just a struggle in me, right? So it could be that break them because it's a struggle, right? So it's also yeah, I think there has to be a mapping there about growth and about where to which angle the growth is going to happen, right? And I think if the person understand, okay, or have come to term that, okay, I don't like this subject, but I understand why. Again, Nathan, you mentioned about why, right? So I understand why I have to grow this way, right? So I think that person will be less likely to break, right? So the balance really is in the communication. It's hard to just eyeball it, especially when you're working with people.
But I'm a big fan of stepping outside your comfort zone. I agree. I think that's where you get real growth and real change.
Absolutely.
But I think where the anxiety and the stress comes from being outside your comfort zone, I think it also comes from a fear of failure, which we all have. So, and as a manager, as an employer, if you can create an environment that doesn't, discipline people for, their mistakes, or doesn't create this fear of failure. If you create, an environment where it's okay to fail, in fact, it's almost expected that you need to fail in order to learn and get better at your craft. That's where I think you get really great innovation and great growth. Okay. Our next question is, sorry, before we go on the panel, do we have any more questions from the floor? Because we've got a few more that have been added, and I know we've got about 15 minutes left. Any other questions from the floor? Raise a hand. Okay. All right. Then next question, the highest voted, is the new normal and working from home nowadays makes us feel insecure that we need to work 24/7 and still we feel it isn't enough. How do we prevent this feeling?
Oh, prevent a feeling, right? Don't prevent the feeling, right? Acknowledge the feeling, right? So I am feeling like I have to work 24/7, right? And now you have to put it under a reason, right? Why is that you feel you need to work 24/7, right? Is it your own expectation? Is it your boss expectation? Is it the task expectation, right? And what does this mindset cost you? Is it costing your health? Is it costing your peace of mind, right? So I think this question is really okay. Drawing a line and setting boundaries and defining priorities, right? Because it doesn't have to be the case. Working from home doesn't have to be 24/7 availability, actually, right? And there are many strategies you can, but you have to commit to it. The first thing that you have to do is you have to have intention about your time, right? So if you say, okay, 7 to 9 p.m. I want to read a book, I want to take a walk, right? Commit to it. Right? Don't say I so fight that feeling I have to work 24/7. You just have to fight it, right? Because if that is eating you up, then you're not going to gain anything from that, right? But also you have to commit a certain time. And I think another thing that might be useful for the questioner is that before the pandemic, we have a commute routine, right? A ritual before work, right? So the good thing is also to mirror that ritual at home, right? So what ritual you want to do before work, right? So that you have that separation, right? So is it like just it can be as you can customize it, right? Do you want to skip rope before work? It's okay, right? You want to jump around, or but a ritual will help, right? Because then there is a clear start and stop, because a clear start and stop gives you your mind, right? Parkinson law, right? If you are thinking you're 24/7, you add the complexity to your task, right? There's always more to do. There's always more complex things to actually tackle, right? But once you have a clear start and stop, right, you define, okay, the next 1 hour, this is my task, right? Read a book, yeah. Set a timer. When it rings, that's it. You let go. You can work again, right? Or you can be available again, right? But yeah, so if that is making your team waiting, right, the most they have to wait is a few minutes, right? And I think that has to be, I mean, this is the time and the line that you have to draw for yourself as well. It is really about your intention of respecting also your time, right? So yeah, I guess that maybe, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I absolutely agree. I think set boundaries, set very clear boundaries. I don't think any employer has the right to make you think like you should be available 24/7, unless you are, a medical doctor on call or a heart surgeon. Nothing is that important that it needs your attention 24/7. I remember when I was a graduate, the first time I took leave, I took like 1 day off, like after 9 months working there, and my out of office was like, oh, please, if there's anything urgent, this is my this is my WhatsApp, this is my email, this is my address, like. And I remember my boss replied back at the time, and she said, don't worry, I think we can survive 1 day without you. The place won't fall apart. And she's like, stop taking yourself so seriously. And so I was like, okay. So that was a really good, gentle backhand from my boss at the time, and she laughed about it after. But I think sometimes we do take, what we do a little too seriously, and just remember, we're human, like anybody else, and as humans, we need time to recharge. We need time to be with our family and with what matters, because I think having that ability to switch off actually makes you a lot more productive when you do switch on.
Rest is part of productivity.
Yep. And actually, on that note, our next question is, what if you've taken a day off to refresh yourself, but when you're back to work, it still feels the same way?
Okay, what if you've taken a day off and back to work, it still feel the same way? That means you haven't tackled the concern. The concern remains unaffected by the rest. The rest doesn't guarantee that the concerns is solved, right? We need a clear definition here, right? So if the rest is for you and your state of mind, right? Of course, when you come back, right, things are still the same way, absolutely, right? But if the rest, right, is if you use the rest to really feed yourself, right, I think you have better energy and mindset to actually approach things, right? But if you take a break, right, and then after that you come back to it, and oh, it's the same thing. Well, did you expect it to change? No, it's the rest is to change you, right? The situation indeed will not change, right? So I think with this questioner, right, what the demand is to actually see, right? It's still the same thing. It's still tiring, right? So okay, look on why is it tiring? Look on okay, oh, it's the expectation. Okay, I need to clear that, right? Oh, it's the fact that I have to sacrifice and I'm not ready to sacrifice. Oh, I need to clean that as well, right? So a lot of time when you have to sacrifice, it is also a call to grow, right? So I know this is what I sense.
Yeah. I actually think this idea of refreshing yourself and taking a day off, I think you got to lower your expectations of just taking one day off, right? You've actually got to commit to switching off, right? And so taking a
That's
day
right.
off doesn't mean still checking your email every 5 minutes, right, on your day off. Like, of course, nothing's going to change. So take some real time off. Whether it's a week, even 2 weeks. You kind of need to get past this always on mode, and sometimes that means going without your phone for a day or two and setting those boundaries with your manager, with your team, to say, hey, I'm going on a hike and I'm going to have no signal, so I'll speak to you in 3 days, right? That's okay. Again, what I said was, we got to stop really overvaluing how much a business can't run unless we're always on WhatsApp, right? Things will survive, the business will continue to grow on. But what's not sustainable is employees' well-being. So do take time off, take more than a day if you need, but also acknowledge that sometimes there's other things you can do to refresh, which is not necessarily taking a day off. It could be starting a musical instrument, it could be catching up with an old friend, it could be walking the dog, it could be signing up to a gym membership. There are so many other things you can do to refresh that might be more effective than just taking one day off.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next one we've got 10 minutes, I think, before we finish up. Still got a few more questions to go. The next one is, often we felt that we've dealt with our problems and go on, but suddenly, and this is a continuation, comes another problem that triggers those past problems and it becomes a huge one. What's your take on that?
Okay. The loop, right? The great loop, right? Okay. My take on that is that I experienced that too. It's a human condition, right? It is a human condition, right? So congratulations, because you have actually identified your weak spot, right? So this is the chip in the armor, right? This is where we are all flawed individual, right? So when you see that, okay, this is looping, right? Okay, I have like I have anger problem, right? That's really great, because you patch that hole little by little, and you must do it incrementally, right? That is the small things, right? Matters, right? Because okay, there's another point of view to that, right? It can be I will come from my hypnotherapy background here, right? It can be something that you have not made peace with, that actually intensify that and makes you triggered so fast, right? And during my first or second year as hypnotherapist, I am finding countless things with myself, right? So this is something that can be as simple as losing a toy when you're a child, right? And that feeling, you don't understand it and you cannot cope, so you run into a fight or flight mode, right? So to the questioner, right? It can be that two thing, right? So if you don't think this is coming from your past or something that is buried, right? Then you've actually identified just a simple flaw that you just have to work on, right? And accept the fact that, okay, this is looping. I just have to face this probably until the day comes, right? Until kingdom comes, right? But in that acceptance, there is great potential, right? Because if you don't accept it, right, you always feel like you're being cheated, right, by this experience. You always feel like, okay, I fail again, right? But if you accept it as part of you, then you can start doing the small things that can actually patch that hole and align yourself to a more positive mindset, right? So yeah, if it's from your past, then book a session, please.
If you're a nice house employee, yeah.
If you're a nice house employee.
Or you can come join Nice House. We're hiring now, and you can get as many sessions with Michael as you like.
Absolutely.
A selfless pitch there. Okay. So the next question, we've got 3 more questions to go. This one looks like it's actually from one of either one of our younger employees or somebody outside the company, but it said, this is my first job since uni and first time now working from home. It's not what I expected since joining a new company. How can I get more out of this situation?
Okay.
It's a tough one because it's something I guess I haven't faced. I was very lucky to work from office. Yeah.
I didn't face that too, right? But I will try to put myself in that shoes, right? Thank you for saying that this is not what I expect, right? So exactly, if there is any burden you're feeling, it's coming from that expectation, right? So you can actually look forward to the end of the pandemic. That's the first one, right? And I cannot picture what the person is going through, right? But if you're just out of uni and you are expecting to go to office and you are stuck at home, right? I think one of the things you can do at home is really to pay more attention to what can be done at home, right? So this is, I mean, if you already accepted that you got to wait until the end of the pandemic, that is your choice, right? And I think, yeah, there's a lot to do at home, right? That can really build yourself as well, right? So I think that will be my answer.
Maybe my answer to add to that, I think if it's if it's related to say an intern, just remember that you're not the only one going through this, right? So I think one thing that helps a lot of people get through this pandemic is realizing it's not just something that affects you individually. It actually is something we're all going through together. So chances are there's probably friends from university or friends even in your team who are going through the same thing. So I think if you kind of reach out and take time to have a virtual coffee and talk about this, that's I think the start of a really good support network. But if this has come from somebody in Ice House, just to FYI, we are, I won't say open for business, but we are allowed 50% capacity. So I know me personally, I got so sick of working from home that ever since I started coming to the office, for me, it's better than a day off. Just the engagement, seeing people in the kitchen, seeing people in the office, getting into a meeting room together and getting back on a whiteboard, those kind of things I find so much more stimulating. So if you have that option, I think as offices are slowly opening, do take the opportunity, because I've personally found a huge benefit, and maybe others will too. Okay, we got three more questions. Maybe we should close the questions, otherwise we'll go past 6 o'clock. So this is, a shout out to Elon Musk. So nowadays, people in tech are flexing on working nonstop with minimum rest, like Elon Musk. What's your take on this toxic hustle culture?
Okay. My take is that if the person knows what he's doing, right, that is really something I cannot go against, right? But if you're just following that because Elon Musk is doing it, that's a big problem, right? But if you see that and it sort of like tickles you and it makes you think like, I have a vision too, right? I will never go against that, right? But yeah, that's my answer.
Okay. Maybe my 2 cents on that is, I think there's it's not so much the toxic hustle culture, but I also think this facade that people have where they think for some reason that more hours equals greater output, which, you know, I've seen in so many organizations. Even when I first moved to Indonesia, I had, you know, my team would stay in the office past 7 o'clock, and I'd ask them, you know, what are you working on? Because I know what I've got to do, but why are you here? And they were like, oh, no reason, just, you know, they're pretending to be in the office and pretending to, you know, be busy. And that's not productive at all. In fact, you know, people who are working far less hours are achieving much better outcomes. So don't just think that this perception of more hours in the office or more hours online is a reflection on your output. It's always, yeah, I'd much prefer people who are far more effective in the time that they have than, you know, trying to send emails at 1 a.m. to make a statement. That's not, we see right through that, right? I did it as a graduate and I was told off for doing it at the time. So yes, I've been on the other side as well, but yes, it is toxic. Yeah. But I also think, in my 2 cents, I think it starts from the top as well, right? If you are running an organization and you're always sending emails at 1 a.m. and on the weekends, then you shouldn't be surprised if you have a toxic work culture and people feel like they don't get time off, because that direction has been set from the top. So I think, you know, set your boundaries. Don't be afraid to take time off if you need, and communicate. Yeah. 2 more questions left. Okay. This one's definitely for Michael, which is, does hypnotherapy help with anxiousness?
Does it help?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the question.
Yeah.
As our certified hypnotherapist, yes.
Yes. But yeah. This is a yes or no question, is it?
I guess so, but maybe you want to elaborate on why. Yes.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that we do in hypnosis is we put people into trance, right? So the trance state is really a state of self-awareness. It is no different. There's no different with that, right? So why is that a help to anxiousness, right? Because this is the exact thing I was presenting earlier, right? Because anxiousness trying to hijack your mind, right? And if you occupied your mind with sense awareness, right, self-awareness, right, then the anxiousness cannot hijack it, right? But you see, sometimes this is a tough task to do yourself, right? And that is why there is a hypnotherapist to guide you into that trance state, right? Now, the reason for anxiousness, as I mentioned, can be very particular, and it's very different from person to person, right? It can be from their expectations, right? It can be from their childhood, right? It can be. It's just I just cannot. The spectrum is so wide, I cannot say, right? But yes, eventually you have to face the dragon, right? Because if you have a pet dragon that is growing bigger and bigger, it's gonna eat you, right? So it's not a pet anymore. So don't keep a pet anxiousness pet, right? You just have to deal with it, and it is not as scary, right? So if you think, oh, if I'm gonna go for a if I'm gonna take care of my mental health, it's going to be scary. I'm not not at all, right? It's just really, in fact, a courageous thing to do, right? And yeah, I mean, it depends, you know. One of the things with hypnotherapy is that it is a contract of effort, not a contract of result, right? You might end up the same after the session, right? But what you learn from that session and how you use that will make the change, right? So again, that is a really long process, but yes, absolutely, I say hypnotherapy helps with anxious.
Excellent. And our last and final question before we wrap up, almost right on time. This was submitted an hour ago, so sorry it took us a while to get to it. The question is, is it possible to get positive energy, not by recalling memories, but instead from the outside, so from like external stimulus?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Right. So the question is really good because it points out to the external, right? So when you are in a great environment and you are in sync with that, and you get positive energy, exactly, that's right. Absolutely, that can be tapped, right? But the thing about that is that you cannot rely on that, right? This is why a lot of people, when they think they can just use the outside positive energy, they just went to a seminar. It lasts for 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, and then back again, right? They go for a retreat, they go for a, right? That is the external positivity. Does it work? Absolutely, of course it will work, right? But uh, 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 I mean, I myself am the one who's done countless retreats and seminars, right? So I started to learn about it, right? But definitely you can absorb, right? You can really learn, and you can really use your environment to actually take the positivity. But at the times when it matters most, it is your inner positivity that will actually create that change, lasting change, right? So yes, I think that is my answer to that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of the questions today. It was quite overwhelming. I think we started with 2, and then very quickly, as soon as the first one raised their hand, we had an avalanche. But what I really appreciate is everyone's engagement, and most of all, a big thank you again to Mas Michael for taking over an hour and a half of his time this afternoon to share with us so much useful tips. And I'm so glad we still got you at ISAS. So if we have any more questions, our employers can book some time. I think your calendar might fill up a bit more now that people have a reminder that you're still available here. But please, thank you on behalf of ISAS, and a big virtual applause for everything today. Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
your time.
Nathan. I'm really glad to get the chance as well. Thank you for the trust.
Of course. And thank you everyone for joining. So that wraps up our session for this October's Geek Talk. Please stay tuned for our next public one and watch the space. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.